So this next panel is something that's very hot. A lot of centralized exchanges are under scrutiny here by government bodies, and we are going to hear from them how they've been navigating that and essentially playing that global regulatory chess. So we're going to hear from some of the biggest centralized exchanges and how they're dealing with these allegations and with navigating through during this turbulent time. And the panel is called Global Regulatory Chessboard, Centralized Exchanges Strategic Navigation through MiCA's Framework and Beyond. So we can take our cues from there. And I'd like to announce our speakers. David, the president of Binance France. Ioana, non-executive director, CryptoUK. Gracy, managing director, Bitget. Co-founder and co-CEO of Bit2Me, and our moderator, MacKenzie from NBC Universal. Please welcome them to the stage.
Hey guys, I'm Mac, and I'm a tech reporter at CNBC. Before we jump into the discussion, I just want to give the panelists an opportunity to briefly talk about the work that they do, and then we'll get right into it. So, Ioana?
I'll start. Hello, everyone. Glad to be here. Cannot wait for this amazing panel. I'm Ioana Surpateanu. I've been in crypto for a while, even though my background is traditional finance, having worked at Citigroup for over 4 years and a half. I support a variety of crypto projects across the spectrum from DeFi 2.0 up to digital fashion. I am Chief Innovation Officer for Swash, which is a Web3 data monetization platform. But today, I'm representing CryptoUK, which is the largest pro-crypto trade association in the United Kingdom. I sit on the board, and what I do there is promote, let's call them fringe crypto projects. So the projects that are at incipient level, looking to emerge, develop, get mature, and I ensure that regulators and policymakers are aware they exist.
Gracy?
Hi everyone, I'm Gracy Chen, Managing Director of Bitget. So right now, if you look at CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap, all those aggregators, they kind of ranked all the exchanges. So we are usually top 5 for derivative exchanges and top 10 in in spot market. I myself at Bitget, I joined the Bitget slightly more than 1 year ago, and I look after global growth, branding, marketing, and PR in the firm. And by the way, there are 2 team members sitting at the first row.
Yeah, we saw because they were only taking pictures of you.
Okay, wrap us up, guys, real quick.
Your turn.
I guess I'll make this clear. I'm Onozawa. I'm the co-CEO at Bit2Me. We're a regulated exchange in Spain and also in Latin America.
David?
Hello everyone. First, thank you and welcome to Paris, everyone. So I'm the president of Binance France. Very happy to have all you here.
Okay, great. So what we're looking at today is how this new and pretty revolutionary set of rules with MiCA affect centralized exchanges. My question to you is, this is going to roll out at some point in the next 12 to 18 months. So in the meantime, how are you adjusting your business models, the way that you operate, in order to be compliant with this new set of rules? I'd love to hear from each of you on this.
I can start since we were born here in the EU, right? So we're domiciled in Spain. We've been around since 2014. It doesn't change anything because we've always been acting like a bank since, or being very heavily putting heavy importance on compliance and AML, even KYT when nobody else was doing KYT yet at the time, and so it doesn't change our roadmap. It just means we also have to be more attentive on how each countries in the EU or member states are going to be executing MiCA.
David or Gracie, any thoughts on how it affects your business?
Ladies first.
Okay, sure. I have to say that it does affect us, and first of all, I really appreciate the fact that there are 31 economic entities or the countries that work together and come up with a very comprehensive framework, MiCA, for more than 500 million people living in this continent. And we, as a global exchange, before MiCA, we do serve lots of European users, and we still have lots of European users. Right now, what we do is I have a big group of compliance people. We are looking into talking to various regulators in each country from Europe, and we just got a few licenses, like one from Poland, one from Lithuania earlier, and these are some of the progress we are making, and we plan to continue making more and more progress and be more compliant or fully compliant with the local regulators. And we really appreciate that there are clearer guides coming up. Cities like or regions like Europe with MiCA, and then some cities in Asia like Hong Kong, Singapore, Japan, they have come up with clearer guides, and that's very important for the CEX.
Yeah, I think that that's something that keeps coming up in terms of the U.S. and this dynamic of regulation by enforcement. People are so hungry for clear guidelines.
Yeah, as I know, David is promoting humility as a result of a book he was just given before the panel. I will speak before him, even though I don't represent a central exchange. But it's interesting, right? I mentioned we do operate in the UK crypto environment. As a trade association, we have members starting with Coinbase across the board to smaller projects, and we're promoting all of them. As you probably know, the UK does not have a comprehensive regime for crypto assets regulation. Currently, crypto projects have to register with the FCA, and the rate is a gloomy one because 85% of projects have been rejected in the course of the last 4 years. And we're definitely looking to change that. And what we do while we watch or observe how companies operating in the EU implement MiCA, we extract best practices, we extract the experience and the experiments maybe that they will have to make, and then inform the UK policymaking environment in terms of them actually, potentially getting more jurisdictional power for crypto by tweaking and perfecting rules for crypto. And actually, just to add that there was yesterday the presentation of the report of the all-party parliamentary group of crypto and digital assets in the House of Commons in the UK Parliament. And the UK government has, again, substantiated the fact that they will push for a financial services type of regulatory approach when it comes to crypto, because I'm sure you've heard that a couple of weeks ago there was a proposal to use gambling as a niche for regulating crypto assets, and that's not going to happen.
And I think we definitely can come back to the UK as a competitive jurisdiction in terms of being a global crypto hub. We'll come back to that, but I think that a lot of people do see MiCA as this test bed to see how things work out. David, I want to hear from you. Binance, obviously a major name in the space for a lot of different reasons. How are you guys thinking about MiCA in terms of compliance, anything that you need to adjust in terms of your business model as European lawmakers roll this out?
So I'm just going to make an update. Maybe you don't know, guys, but UK is outside of EU.
Yeah, they're bystanders. They're watching how you guys do.
I think it was pretty obvious when I said they don't have a comprehensive regulatory regime. Had they been in the EU, they would have had MiCA.
We'll come back to the UK. Tell me about MiCA and Binance.
And what is interesting is actually we see a neighbor that is outside of EU operating with another regulation and a crypto framework that is setting up in EU. And you see a lot of difference between those two markets that's setting up. So first, MiCA, it's a very interesting opportunity because before it's one country, one regulation, one special rule. So foreign exchange is one team per country with one set of rules, with special development, special restriction, market by market. And problem doesn't add up, they multiply. So it becomes exponentially difficult to become global with a crypto framework that change at every country. So I would say that before regulation, license were Pokemon badge. The more you get skilled. Now it's going to become more like industrialized. It's going to help also the big player, but also the small player to attack more markets with the same team without having, to have a MLRO on every country, dedicated, etc. but have more like a European team that works.
Well, that's the thing that most interests me about MiCA, and I don't know if I'm latching on to the right thing, but this idea of reciprocity, so, passporting your rights from one EU member state to all, all countries that are part of the European Union, that's incredibly useful to me in the context of a startup and if you're trying to expand quickly. But for businesses that already have jurisdiction in international markets, is that a game changer, or how does that make things better for the businesses that you run right now?
No, yeah, it is, because basically, first, we're not at the same level in every country. Second, every country is not at the same level in crypto. So it's going to give a bar where some countries are going to even get better at crypto with the regulations that works better than the regulations that you apply. Yet, it's not going to be magic, meaning that on top of that, you have how you market. And how you market is going to be very different from some country to others. Example, in Spain, CNMV, control everything. You cannot do a market operation without more than 100K people, one campaign per campaign, etc.
And Co, you guys were the first crypto asset firm, period, to be licensed in Spain. You were a first mover. So does this, would this have made your life a lot easier, or was it actually better to be a first mover in that sense?
No, this helps everything. I think where we were when we got registered by the Bank of Spain, that definitely was helpful back then, and it's also a product of all the years that we've been working and dialoguing with regulators, right? So we're a very regulated, centralized exchange as we started, and then we even did our own ICO, which we worked with the regulators to make sure that it was all within the context of what the regulations could be, right? Just making sure that we don't touch on any of the securities side of things, and so it's been very useful back then. And now looking forward, MiCA is obviously a huge thing, right? Because now it's not just Spain; it's now the whole EU, and thinking that the European Union has always been kind of the trendsetter with laws like this, like with GDPR, for example. We can expect that other countries will follow.
And I definitely do want to get into the dynamic of the other countries following, MiCA being this this testing ground for what policies do and do not work. Before we get into that, another nuance of MiCA that I find really interesting is this idea of protections for investors, and there are already a lot that are baked in through existing frameworks for the consumer, right? For your retail traders, but it's that institutional money that is especially key when you think about onboarding fiat into crypto, scaling businesses. And it seems like MiCA addresses that audience and creates more protections for institutions. Is that how it's playing out in the way that you see it affecting your businesses?
I think it's one of the intention of MiCA. Yet there's still a lot of steps to go. Most of the regulation right now are models that are not battle tested. So the battle test is going to be the most interesting. What do we need to do in order to really protect the customer? We saw last year that proof of reserve was an absolute thing. 2 years ago, it was not even spoken about, and it's not even on license, etc. It should be a barrier, an entry barrier. So for me right now, MiCA is a very good first iteration that need to be battle tested, updated, etc. But still, it's yet a good start. A lot of countries are not even on the good start right now.
Yeah, and that's just for crypto. Sorry, that's just on the crypto side. So tomorrow the press we're going to release a press release tomorrow, and I can say it here. Telefonica is coming into the board, and we have a global partnership with them. This is one of the largest telcos in the planet, right? And they have banks and everything. And the whole global expansion with the Telefonica group, with us, touches more than just crypto. And so MiCA, for example, won't touch the securities or tokenized real-world assets. They won't touch DeFi. So it's looking at a global perspective. MiCA does help a lot in terms of our core business, which is buying and selling cryptocurrency. But then when we talk about tokenization of real-world assets and DeFi, that's when things are less clear, but we're looking at it more surgically rather than just kind of open like that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually agree with what you stated in your question, which is that the fact that you have a comprehensive regulatory regime throughout the EU aside from the fact that it cuts bureaucracy and that you have passporting and more streamlined licensing regimes, it does allow for the institutional investors to step in. And let's face it, we have a capital problem in crypto at the moment. We've kind of exhausted the on-chain value creation. We need outside of the blockchain capital. And institutional investors and institutional players can provide that via tokenized real-world assets. And I'm not just talking about tokenizing assets and putting them on the blockchain. I'm talking about using those real-world assets as collateral, for example, to enter the DeFi space, generating yield, et cetera. So there are many, many sophisticated things that can be done. But yes, institutional investors, let's not forget, institutional players are heavily regulated. They want to feel safe to operate in crypto, and so that provides a layer of certainty and security for them to intervene. So I think that from that perspective, MiCA plays a major role throughout the EU. On the consumer protection side, let's also not forget, these regulations are always a political game, right? We have elections in the EU next year. And so consumer protection is always going to be a major point. So you will see incrementally the accentuation of consumer protection related facts in crypto and outside of crypto as well. So both, I agree with actually what you were saying, both these angles are tackled by MiCA, not just MiCA, but also by MiCA.
Just to add on our points. Number one, I read in statistics that there are only less than 10% of institutional investors here in Europe holds a little bit, even just like a little assets in cryptocurrencies. Not to say if they want to invest more. So I think the implements of MiCA, right now this is just a starting point, right? There are lots of things that we need to be done. But with the implementation of MiCA, there are more interested institutional investors on board, and that will help drive, just not just about the price of certain coins, but also the whole liquidity, mass adoption of cryptocurrency. And David was talking about proof of reserve and protection. We also think that is very important. Actually, many people know Binance, or actually CZ started with saying, we should have proof of reserve, and he kind of had a call to action for all the major centralized exchanges to have proof of reserve right after FTX collapse. We were one of the first group of people who said, yes, we want to do that. And other than proof of reserve, we also have something called protection fund. Actually, Binance have like a 1 billion protection fund, which is called SAFU, S-A-F-U, 2 billion now. Okay, I think we are the second largest, other than their 1 or 2 billion, or we have like more than 300 million in our protection fund, in our Bitget protection fund. That's, from what I know, like 1 month before, we're the second largest. So all these kind of implement some methodologies, proof of reserve, protection fund, MiCA frameworks, they need to work together. Like some are implemented by the regulators, such as MiCA. Some are more like industrial standard that we kind of agreed that we want to do to make sure that our users' funds are well protected. They are both important to drive the trust and be transparent and drive more mass adoption.
No, and I think that idea of proof of reserves is something that people have really latched onto, as you said, since the implosion of FTX and this, general erosion of confidence in CeFi. And some of the moves toward that, you have like known global accounting firms who have disassociated from major exchanges because they say that they can't adequately ensure that proof of reserves are legit. It's whether it's just a lack of understanding of how the industry works. So how do you solve for that? Because we've seen partial proof of reserves. We've seen some indication that things are okay, but who's meant to police this? Is that, as you said, like an internally set industry standard? Are you meant to get that from external regulators? Like, when do we get that?
I think that's something we need to solve in the long run. We don't have a short-term solution to that question. Industrial standard is one thing when especially the major centralized exchanges want to work together. And then I actually talked to some of the auditors. I talked to all the big fours before. And none of them want to take our business to be our auditing firm. But I think that needs time, and hopefully one day they will say yes to this business. And again, I think that will maybe this will be an issue that is going to be very, in the center of all the people in the industry and also in debating for at least 3 to 5 years.
Actually, I have a different opinion on that because MiCA covers proof of reserves. Actually, they will force, in a way, stablecoin issuers and other types of centralized players to display proof of reserves. Obviously, MiCA, let's not forget, is a political agreement. What follows are the technical standards that are going to be designed by the supervising authority across the EU. And I guess we will have more information there in terms of proof of reserves, buffer capital buffers, etc., governance, liquidity provisions, but they are in MiCA, and there will be, within the next year, hopefully clear technical guidance from the supervisory authorities in terms of what CeFi players need to comply with depending on their profile. And I know that some stablecoin issuers, I'm not going to name them, are pretty worried that apparently the rules seem to be extremely stringent and they're lobbying to enable a much more flexible regime. And like I said, that it will come in the next 12 months from the supervisory authorities.
I was talking to a principal economist at the European Commission earlier this week. It was in the context of decentralized finance and self-policing within that space, especially as lawmakers look to expand what those rules look like. We've said on stage here, MiCA doesn't cover DeFi. There are other things that are not encompassed within this. And my question to you guys is, are you talking to lawmakers? Are you working with them? Like you mentioned, this idea of lobbying for more favorable terms with some of the stablecoin issuers. Like, is that something that's going on actively? David, with Binance, what conversations are you having?
We're talking with lawmakers only when we have problems. That's good. We have a lot of problems.
So we're speaking about the subject. So first, there's a difference between a market that is regulated, a market that is regulated and you're not, and a market that is unregulated. And right now, the message on NFT and DeFi is going to be, you have 4 or 5 years to experiment without any regulation or sandbox or stuff like that. So it's a real sandbox for people to implement without having drastic change that's going to come. So it's the time to learn, but not the time to industrialize your learning. That's it.
Did you want to?
Yeah, I do. There is a recital in MiCA, for those of you who don't know, recital 22, which explicitly, or not fully explicitly, states that fully decentralized projects are not covered by MiCA. Now, how do you prove that a project is fully decentralized? It's a pretty problematic thing to do. Again, let's wait for the technical standards. Hopefully, we will avert a situation whereby MiCA does potentially apply in some cases to DeFi. Same thing for NFTs. There is another recital that deems that NFTs that are part of large collections and are fractionalized might be covered by MiCA. So we're not off the hook yet. I wish you were right, David, and that we will have this extended period of experimentation. Actually, the French, one of the ACPR, they issued a consultation on DeFi, and yes, we've responded to that as CryptoUK and across the board, different entities. I think the problem with DeFi regulation is the fact that not even within the industry have we actually created a comprehensive position in terms of what we think should be regulated. I mean, let's think about the DeFi stack, right? You have the settlement layer, the asset layer, protocol, application, aggregation. Where do you step in? And our initial suggestion was to tell the regulators to stay away from the protocols, stay away from the developers, do not treat the developers as financial intermediaries. So we do have principles. And for now, I think that self-regulation is the only path forward while we experiment and see what we can propose.
Before we move on, real quick, Gracy, are either of you, have your exchanges been conversing with EU lawmakers as either in the last few years as they were writing MiCA or going forward as they continue to expand legislation?
We have, yeah, we have. Since we're a domiciled entity in the EU since inception, we kind of have to, but we also did voluntarily.
Yeah, we also have communications.
So David, it's hard to ignore the fact that Binance is in a lot of trouble in the U.S. There's this dynamic where You've got regulation by enforcement. The SEC is coming down quite hard on the U.S. entity. But the concern here is that if Binance and CZ's assets in the U.S. are frozen, then the erosion of confidence wouldn't just be contained within the 700,000 users who are part of Binance US. It may extend into a larger bank run globally, or there might be concern about the global business. And so what do you say to critics who are concerned about what US regulatory action might mean for your global entity?
First, I don't care about what happened in US. Sorry, guys. We are in Europe. We are with a French regulator, a European regulator. What happened in US, stay in US.
I think a lot of people would argue that there are, even if it's contained within the U.S., those regulatory actions, there are knock-on effects that are going to be hard to ignore. Right now we're talking about the SEC and the CFTC. I mean, if the DOJ brings an action, then that might have ramifications. But you're saying that you don't feel that will have any impact on your business.
One step at a time. Like right now, you throw away a lot of different things that are on the table. And I would say, yeah, if it's Armageddon, it's Armageddon. But the first thing is that right now we are manipulating utilities here that are considered as securities there. The second element is the freezing asset of BAM just concerned BAM, meaning just the asset of Binance US. Binance.com is not like target of anything.
The actions are targeted to Binance US. That is true. And like the dynamic that we've seen since the SEC, brought this suit last week, against both Coinbase and Binance, collectively $4 billion worth of customer deposits left the exchanges in the US, and that is separate to the global entity. And we're talking about the global entity today. But the question is whether there are any concerns about, ramifications for the global counterpart, because, some of the accusations in there have to do with commingling of funds across the two.
The only concern that I have right now is that we look too much at the car crash and not to drive. Like basically right now, the opportunity for Europe is to take the lead on Web3 and never take it back. But if we look too much at what happens in US and say every time there's a butterfly that moves its wing in US, it's going to be a tornado in Europe, it's not going to work. So right now, the focus that I have with all my team, with all the people in Europe in Binance, but also all the people outside of US not working on Binance.us, is to make the platform move forward very fast, because there is an opportunity here to play. And that's the most interesting. Are we going to miss the shot because we're always looking at US in the middle, or are we really decentralized? And basically, it's just one pod that goes into a direction that is an American protectionism, not against Binance, it's against all crypto. When you have 95% of the market with a currency, such as US dollar, it's very difficult to innovate and to, phagocyte your own market share. You're always going to try to protect your market, such as Kodak with the photo camera. They had a market for themselves. They had the innovation as well. They refused the innovation. The story is going to maybe repeat itself if US goes this road. But me, I'm okay. US got Web 2. Europe is going to take Web 3. And I'm totally okay with that.
I'm curious to hear, just one more thing with you, David. Obviously, you're in France, so you're more concerned with how MiCA operates. But, we've mentioned on stage today that Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, like the UAE more generally, have these favorable crypto jurisdictions. So how do you think about operating your business? Do you skew towards customers in those places where you know that the government is aligned with what your end goals are, where there's synergies? Or how do you navigate more difficult jurisdictions like the US? Do you just exit that market entirely?
So US is really an exceptional case where basically I cannot even tell you how we do, and it's not even my company or the company or the company's
it's separate
strategy.
entities, yeah.
In most countries where you have a regulation, it's very good because if you are on the green line or the red line. So you know where you are and you apply a different rule. When you are on the green line, you can do marketing like business as usual. When you are on the red line, you need to be more inactive on your marketing and to maintain the operation. When country doesn't have a regulation, basically it's the Far West with its advantage and it's inconvenient. You can do pretty much everything you want, but at some point you're going to need to evolve and adapt. And so you need to know both sides. So for me, it's very interesting because each market has its culture, its regulation, is organization regime, how power is circulating inside this country. It's like an investigation when you go to one country and try to optimize it. You need to know the culture, you need to really like personify and see that, and it's no hazard. We are good in the country when we have very good local talent. Those people build.
You know, and we only have a couple of minutes left here, and I do want to, you know, talk about what's next in terms of regulation, in terms of, you know, whether that's working with the European Commission, you know, as they work on version 2.0 of this, or expanding the remit to include, you know, some of the other, you know, subsectors of crypto that we've been chatting about. Whether it's like the UK, which is what you're focused on, which is totally separate to
Not
MiCA.
just today, I'm representing.
Yeah, no, in your capacity today, kind of like speaking to how the UK is mining best practices from MiCA, what does that look like going forward? Because obviously you operate across many jurisdictions. You've got MiCA, but you're also like operating globally. So how do you navigate, you know, those rules? What is the next step here? I mean, it's kind of a wide encompassing question, but I guess what I'd love to hear from you guys is in the next 12 months, where do you see regulation going? How are you, are you focusing on MiCA 2.0, or are you focusing on being compliant in other countries?
I'm focusing on MiCA 1.0
Yeah, I wanted
first.
to say, it will take a while before MiCA 2.0 comes into place, if ever. So we still haven't finished the implementation period for MiCA, right? It's going to be 1 year,
12 to
1 year and a
18
half.
months.
Yeah, plus the technical standards. Sorry,
Well, as a global exchange, we serve more than 8 million users from more than 100 countries. So back to your question, I guess we do have some sort of expertise on serving global users. While 3 days ago, I was in London in another event, and we were talking about this topic in terms of Asia rise, US falling. That's just like interesting concept or a topic that we had. I don't mean that it's like I really fully agree with that, but you know when we bring up this topic, it also means that there are people thinking of it as that way. And there are people that I talked to in London who lived in London, and right now they are thinking about relocating to some more crypto-friendly Asia countries or cities like Dubai, Singapore, Hong Kong. So these three regions, in my personal opinion, I think these are the three Asia hubs. And then in Europe, maybe London, Paris, these are the European hubs. Back to US or the American continent, it's really tricky. We really need to see how the SEC, CFTC, or especially the current suits that they have right now, how it's going to be ending. It may end very differently for Coinbase and Binance.
Yeah, and
because of the different suits that they had.
Yeah, and I mean, Coinbase has very publicly said that, you know, if it comes to that point, the hostility that they're seeing from federal regulators in the U.S. could lead them to exit the country entirely, move their operations abroad. It seems like that's a sentiment shared by other U.S.-based firms.
Yeah, I just want to I you know, second what David was saying about Europe, but let's not forget, Europe can become a Web3 leader, but not just via regulation. I mean, we're always talking about Europe as this major exporter of regulation, and it's worked with GDPR and other types of laws, but it's not enough. I mean, innovation still happens in the US and Asia. That's the reality. Yes, potentially a favorable regulatory regime
Wait.
Yeah, no, statistics say it. Innovation happens in the US and Asia. It's a known fact, but we attract, I mean, as a result of MiCA being adopted, we already see an increased VC crypto investment in Europe, not just the EU, so that includes the UK. So yeah, let's hope, you know, we move beyond just promoting Europe, and I'm pro-European, I live here, I want to promote the European ecosystem, but regulation is not enough. We cannot just have a plethora of laws right now gravitating towards alongside MiCA. It's not enough. We need to do more.
Okay, just to remember one thing, is because, you know, like a nation, it's not like a generation history, it's multiple generations. So I just want to remind one thing. US and Asia didn't invent automobile, airspace, matches, cinema. Actually, they were invented in France. They were the driver of the 20th century but not commercialized by the people that invented it. Wait. Which means one thing, that we just forgot how to innovate. Yeah, I'm very defensive on my
No, but it's
ground.
not. I'm actually the point I was trying to make is that we can be in this region an innovator, but not just via regulation. It
No,
just
but the
doesn't work
regulation
like that.
in our industry, capital is not going to flow in places where regulations aren't clear, and which is why the capital or the entrepreneurs themselves, instead of setting up shop in California, will not set up shop in California.
In the
They'll set
UK, like we saw with A16Z.
or in the EU.
Oh,
where-
that's
right?
very good, A16Z. Listen, for a strategy to be validated, I need people to go to the right direction, and I need people to go to the wrong direction. And A16Z, and this is my prediction, guys, is going to be the best example of what not to do when you want to enter into a European market. But let's see.
We'll see. But yeah, I think you just touched on the point where it's like innovation doesn't happen in Europe, and it does happen in Europe, especially in our industry now, where capital must flow in places where they won't get burned, and the
Tell me-
entrepreneurs themselves as well.
Please tell me one major European crypto company that you know of,
Ledger.
aside.
Ledger's
one.
having some.
One,
Not
guys,
just
one
No,
is
no, no,
enough.
no, no. No, it's not enough. It's not enough. I'm sorry. And even this fact, everyone was so excited that A16Z came to Europe. Why can't we have? I don't see anyone in the US being excited when a European company comes there, right? So we need to do more. I'm sorry. That's
Of course,
Of course, we do need to
Of
do more.
course.
It's for sure, but it doesn't kind of discount an entire region, right? On what we're doing for the industry. I think we're doing on a regional scale. I think we're doing pretty cool things with Bit2Me in Spain. I think we're doing pretty innovative things with a lot of corporate accounts. Sorry. No, we're not, our exchange business is our core business, but we're spearheading the Web3 strategies of some of the largest publicly listed European or Spanish companies in the world. And I can't say in detail, but then these are very innovative things as well. Because not only because of regulation, but then also because it seems like the place right now where you can, at least where the green and the red lines, or the US right now. I think going back to the talk earlier with Yatsu, he said don't write off the US. I think they'll eventually come back, we'll see. But today is what we have to worry about, and MiCA 1.0. And just put our heads down and keep building so our industry gets somewhere, right? And we're about that later.
yeah. Top 20 crypto adoption countries. There's no European country there.
But that's
but yeah.
adoption, though.
But it means that you do not have
The Philippines is
a
the
company that aggregates users around it.
The Philippines is what, maybe number 1 or 2 most
On the
users on
retail
MetaMask.
side,
Doesn't
yeah.
mean they're the most innovative country
No,
in the
but they
world.
are.
I think we're getting a nod from our
I think
MC.
they're kicking us
There's
out.
a lot of patience here.
No tension. I just want Europe to grow, and it cannot happen just with regulation.
I want to say thank you to the panelists for the heated discussion. Very smart take on what's going on.
Thank you to the moderator.
to the audience
so
for
much.
joining us, and to the conference organizers for bringing us together to have this conversation.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you, guys.